Sighting in with Shooting USA. Firearms news and information for America's hunters and sport shooters.
To the people who lived it, the memories are vivid. The world was at war, and America responded to eventually defeat the enemy. It was an extraordinary time of unity in this country, and for some who weren't yet born, that history is a powerful draw to relive those times as World War II reenactors. Let's turn the clock back more than 6 decades. Turn it back to a day and a time a generation of Americans can't forget. June 6, 1944, D-Day at Normandy. And while thousands of Americans fell on the beaches that day, thousands more jumped into France, paratroopers fighting their way through the hedgerows of the countryside. Now turn the clock forward to the 21st century and a field in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, where men in uniform, like Keith Rutherford, prepare to recreate that historic day.
All right, we need to check our antenna connections.
They did what they were asked, when they were asked, and didn't ask why or how. They just served their country as they were told. They'll make your squad assignment and tell you where to fall in with, and that'll let you know what group you'll be fighting with once we actually get out there.
Keith is a major in the 501st Parachute Infantry Regiment. The 501st is a devoted group of historians and collectors who reenact the sacrifice Americans made on D-Day and throughout World War II. The 501st parachuted into France, and later, at the Battle of the Bulge, Company I was nearly wiped out.
In fact, they serviced or suffered 70% casualties. And so to honor those men, the guys who didn't come back, we decided to designate that particular unit as our historical reference.
Honoring the past and the soldiers who lived it is what this reenactment is all about.
For those of you who've not been, we always have a scripted scenario here.
Major Rutherford addresses his troops before battle. And as you can see, the reenactors are not all playing Americans. There can't be a battle without the Germans. The 14th Armored Recreations Group supports the 501st with Stuart tanks and half-tracks and British paratroopers prepared to fight.
So the way the scenario opens, it's D-Day morning, and with the bombings the night before and with the anticipation of skirmishes throughout the morning and day, there have been a group of French civilians basically that are moving out of the towns into the countryside for safety, and that's how we're going to open the scenario.
As the refugees move through the German checkpoint, Nazis capture a British paratrooper and the civilians hiding him. Moments later, more Brits attack, and the battle with the Third Reich is on. In just minutes, American Stuarts attack with heavy firepower, pounding the German artillery positions. 30 caliber Brownings on M16 half-tracks are close behind the armor, and so are the fighting men of the 501st. The battle rages, and with a crowd of spectators numbering in the thousands, no detail is too small. The gunfire and action are so real you almost forget they're not. And that's what the men of the 501st want. Most of their firearms, uniforms, and gear actually went to war in Europe, even if these men did not. So why do they replay the past?
You could probably ask 100 people out here that question and get, overwhelmingly, it's going to be the same answer. Most of us do it for the vets. And when we come out here, what we try to do is to educate the public to give due diligence to the guys who did this for real.
Major Rutherford is right about that. They do it for the vets.
Absolutely. That's why a lot of us do this. You know, and I do it to honor my dad.
Ernie Anglin was a real paratrooper, second generation.
when I think about it. You know, they knew exactly what they were getting into, and they did it anyway.
Fall back! Give me a line right here!
To learn more.
Travis
Go
McLeod
Valentino.
never served in the Army, but he honors those who did.
I love being able to spend time with the veterans and hear their personal stories. You know, they're dying off at a rate that's just astounding right now, and it's just a shame.
Even the men in enemy uniforms do this to honor American vets. Dave Navais says he represents a German soldier, not Nazi politics.
And we do this to help keep the memory alive of what our ancestors had to go through in order to keep the United States free.
Watch that charge! Watch that charge!
The Americans have now broken through the lines and overrun the German position. The enemy soldiers are dead or captured.
Get up! Up!
The forces of evil are in defeat, beaten again by the 501st.
Didn't have a choice. You know, if we didn't do something about it, it was going to be here sooner or later. And so they just sucked it up, and they did what they had to do.
And feeling that you're a part of the greatest generation for a weekend is part of the appeal. But most reenactors begin first as collectors. We'll look at the guns coming next.
Shooting USA is brought to you by Blackhawk, the world's finest tactical gear. Performance rules. And by Gammo, innovators of power and velocity in adult precision air guns.
Whether Civil War or World War II, reenactors are collectors of authentic pieces from the period. That applies to uniforms and equipment, and definitely to the guns. You see things at a 501st encampment only a veteran of World War II can truly appreciate, like a young soldier writing a letter home during a lull in the fighting.
Letter home from my girlfriend.
And women in their uniforms, the Marines, Red Cross, and Women's Army Corps.
Appreciate you ladies coming out.
Thank you for having us.
Y'all look good.
And you know there's not a vet alive who isn't wondering if these uniforms are really authentic.
Let's see what you've got.
And it has the garter belt.
One more time on that, please.
The garter belt.
Yes, the garter belt. And the authentic seams down the
Oh,
back.
absolutely.
Complete in every detail.
Why do you do this?
Why do I do it? Oh, to honor the men and women that have served and do serve our country. It's a way of saying thank you very much to everything that they've done for us.
In truth, there's something for everyone here, young and old alike.
Thanks for the picture.
But the biggest attraction for World War II vets has to be the firearms. The fearsome Nazi MG-34 and MG-42 machine guns. The famous Bren Mark I, Britain's superb light auto weapon. And the Sten Mark II, 40s machine pistol, state-of-the-art. There's the Thompson M1A1 submachine gun, and the weapon that replaced it in the hands of GIs, the well-named M3 grease gun. And one interesting study in contrast on the battlefield is the service rifles the Germans and Americans issued their infantry soldiers. Note the terrific firepower advantage of America's semi-auto M1 Garand versus the bolt-action Mauser 98K. It's no wonder an old soldier like Clint Sulfridge gets emotional just holding a Garand. Clint joined the Army near the end of the war, 1945, and learned to shoot the Garand in training for America's final invasion.
Trained for the Japanese invasion of the Japanese mainland. And the atomic bomb saved us. Don't think I'd been here today if it weren't for the atomic bomb.
Another familiar American firearm is John Browning's work of military genius, the .30 caliber 1917 water-cooled machine gun. But this is not such a familiar sight. The A6 model Browning, a lightweight version of the air-cooled 1919 model machine gun. This .30 cal is for paratroopers and a favorite of Camden Long.
You jump with this in a leg bag on your leg, 45 pounds, and you take the stock off and the handle off and the bipod off, but then you jump with all of it.
The A6 is a two-man weapon. His A-gunner is Neil Weatherall. And what makes the A6 different from other .30s is this one is fired from the shoulder.
You take aim and just squeeze the trigger. Fire in the hole! And then you'd shoot 2 to 3 round bursts, just like I did.
Here's how we're accustomed to seeing this firearm with its familiar pistol grip and without the shoulder stock. Either way, Camden says firing it is an adrenaline rush. But he knows he's getting just the faintest glimpse of what his real heroes went through in battle.
This is nothing like what they went through, but maybe, just maybe, you can go back in time just for a split second and you sit there and think, wow, how did they live through this?
So take it as honoring the servicemen and women who did live through the war.